is on the hot seat, and he doesn't like it. All right, he's not telling you the truth, and we're going to get into the truth. We are not fair and balanced here, but we are about the truth. All right, this is The Ordinary American. I'm your host, Paul Sarkis. We are anti-left. Nope. Again, sorry about that. There we go. All right, here we go. I think we got the audio working. So we're going to get into a few things. The Newsollini story, there's a bunch of angles to it, and I think it's a little bit bigger than maybe even I initially thought when I saw it yesterday. I'll tell you a little inside baseball about my experience with doing this show. Before I did this show, I had no idea how hard it was to figure out what topics to bring up in each show. I chose to do it every day because I think the fight is that important for the Battle of America. And I knew I wanted to include certain things. We do a fair amount about religion. The greatest life hack anybody can do is build a relationship with God. We do a segment on Friday, Forgiveness Friday, because forgiveness is a gift to humanity. We do some of those things. We're anti-leftist. We do a lot. Everything really ties into that one way or another. But which stories? So today's a great example. There is so much that we could do on Iran, but there's a couple of other things. This Newsollini thing ties into a few things. We're gonna jump over to rent-seeking, Obamacare, and a few other things that tie into that. We're gonna do some polls on illegal immigration because that ties into a couple of bigger items. You let me know. Put comments in if you think that we should spend more time on something like Iran today. The Ordinary American at proton.me is the email. Send us your opinion. I don't know, and I'm just an ordinary American. I'm just making up a decision and deciding that Iran is super important. But we're not going to spend the whole show on it, and we could spend the whole show on it. All right, I am going to say, now that I said that, the decision I made was I'll do a brief few minutes on Iran. It's going. Trump's going. It's been signed digitally. It's going to be signed in person, I think, in Switzerland on Friday. He said he's going to read it out loud, maybe at a press conference, so everybody knows what's in it and there doesn't have to be any interpretation. He and Vance, in separate situations, were doing dispelling some of the things we heard out there, like our taxpayer money is going. That's not true. It's coming from Qatar. So it was a Qatar? I think it's Qatar. No, UAE. I forget. I'll have to. Sorry about that. I've got a lot of things trying to jam in here. One of the nations in the Middle East, I think it's Qatar, but I'm not sure, is giving the $300 billion, provided Iran does a bunch of things. And JD stressed that everything is related to performance. He stressed that Trump has taught him that you don't trust anybody. And if you followed the show, the great Ned from the Middle East, who's not Ned, says you can never trust the Iranians, ever. And we've seen that. So JD says, Trump says we don't trust anybody. Everything's done on essentially pay for play, not in an illegal way. You do something, you get something. Okay? So he also said that, which I think was important, that Obama completely threw Israel under the bus. Why is that important? Because a huge portion of the Obama support group in this country were Jewish Americans. And if you've been with the show for a while, you know that I say often, stop voting for Democrats, not just Jewish Americans, all Americans. It's like breaking into jail. Okay, only you're breaking other people into jail, and you might be able to pay to get out, but they can't. Obama sold Israel out. Trump is fixing that. The Abraham Accords, etc. All right, that's the real overview. But Trump is over right now at the G7. He's had a couple of press conferences with some of the different nations that are there. I can't believe, he goes essentially right from the 250th year in celebration with the UFC fight. He did a phone call interview after that with the New York Times. How many Republican presidents are rushing to do that? Spent like 20 something minutes with the New York Times writer. That was actually a fairly decent article I read. And then he hops on a plane and he's flying over. Meanwhile, what are the priorities of the Democrats? As the president of the United States, Donald Trump, he's trying to figure out world peace. What are the Democrats doing? They're working on taking his name off the Kennedy Center. That's a difference. That's the contrast, as the great Dan Bongino says, contrast in politics. That's the contrast. Trump is working tirelessly for ordinary Americans. The Democrats are worried about a name on a building because, truthfully, that's important to them. They see that as important. Okay? He's out trying to build. Look, does he want his name on a building? Yeah, he puts his name on a lot of buildings. But he's building a much bigger legacy. All right. That's what I'm going to say about Iran and Trump for now. If you've been with the show, you know I am a big fan and think he's the best president since Lincoln. All right. Let's move on. Newsollini, he's on the hot seat. What's the backstory? What he doesn't tell you is a big portion of the backstory. Let's first play a little bit of his press conference. He held a press conference. Where is it? He held a press conference and yesterday, I think it was, and he's trying to get out ahead of the story. As he tells us here, he knows that he's under investigation. Let's listen.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding.
By the way, he doesn't know that. That's a lie, number one. Number two, he's repeating exactly what the Democrats did to Trump. Exactly what they did to Trump.
Records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump.
He's telling you that's random documents. That's not true. They're digging through documents that they think are relevant. That's how an investigation goes. He's repeating again exactly what the Department of Justice under Biden did to Trump when they indicted him a gazillion times and transferred employees from the DOJ to the Southern District in New York, when they abused the grand jury process by having a grand jury, I think it was in New York, indict him and transfer, whatever that means, charges down to Florida.
Isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history. He's turned the levers of government into his own personal power ministries to reward cronies and to try to jail.
We're going to get into two other topics today where we're going to show exactly this for the Democrats. Again, the Democrats will always project what they're doing onto their opponent. By the way, the great Dan Bongino, some unbelievable observations. The Republicans may not be the solution to the problem, but the Democrats are the cause of the problem. So Republicans get wrapped up in these things too, but the Democrats are much more proficient and much more prolific at it.
His opponents. His personal attorney now runs the Department of Justice, which has repeatedly gone after his political enemies. Ask Jerome.
By the way, if what he means is he's gone after corrupt Democrats, then I guess he's right, but he doesn't tell you that.
Powell sent them after James Comey, Trish James, Adam Schiff. He sent them after Tim Walz.
Of course.
And a woman that a jury found Donald Trump had sexually abused. One by one, anyone who has challenged Donald Trump has ended up on his hit list. And today, I proudly join that list. After calling for my arrest last year, Donald Trump directed his Department of Justice to investigate me.
By the way, this is the beginning of the big lie. What he's not telling the people is that this investigation started under the Biden administration. Why would it start under the Biden administration? Democrats are always of the hive mind, just one voice reading off of the same sheet of paper. They vote in unison, always, right? Right. But don't forget, the Democrats will use the system to crush anyone who veers out of that. And what did he do in 2024? He wanted to be the presidential nominee. He thought that Biden wasn't going to run or couldn't run. He scooted himself over to China, if you remember, to try to boost his public profile to see that he's meeting with world leaders. Well, Xi must have not got the memo, because Xi sent over some like third level communist people and it didn't work. I suspect that when we find out and see the documents, the Biden administration was pissed at that. They were also probably pissed because they wanted Half-Wit Harris to get a clean run at it. By the way, corrupt as the day is long, the entire process. No one voted for Halfwit Harris. She didn't go into one primary, and somehow magically she's the nominee. But he doesn't share that. He says Trump did it. Now, what he does is he says Trump directed his Department of Justice. That's because when they take over, there's a whole bunch of cases ongoing, and somebody has to make a decision, and they decide, yeah, keep that one going. He's lying all the time, twisting the truth.
And just in the last week, I've learned that his campaign has reached my own home. To get me, he's coming after my wife, Jen, a public servant, a woman who's dedicated her life to supporting women and girls.
Did you see him look down? That's one of those signs that they tell you is when somebody's lying. He couldn't even say that with a straight face.
Someone who has done nothing wrong other than having the temerity to advocate for what she believes in. If they can't intimidate me, they'll go after the mother of our children. Donald Trump picked the wrong target. We have nothing to hide.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. What we see here is him getting out ahead of this. And by the way, probably smart. He's a good politician. That's probably smart. He thinks he can get out and turn enough people because he's going to get CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and NBC to put this out there and say Trump is going after his political enemies. So he's trying to turn public opinion. All right. He mentions this thing about his wife. We're going to spend a few minutes on this. By the way, everybody knows, if they want to be honest, that California is totally corrupted. Why is it corrupted? We talk about this all the time. We might have even talked about this yesterday. California is single party rule. The Democrats have worked diligently for 30, 40 years, probably honestly, since Reagan was in as governor, to get single party rule. And now they have, and they've had it basically since Schwarzenegger got out. And Schwarzenegger wasn't really a Republican governor. He was a go along, get along guy. So they've had complete and total control. And in the bigger populated areas, San Francisco and LA, they've had total control. I think the last Republican in office in either one of those places might have been, what's his name, Reardon, a mayor in LA in the early 2000s, I think. But other than that, all the city council, everything's Democrat. So why do I bring that up? Because the definition of tyranny is no oppositions allowed. That is single party rule. By the way, all of the lefty, all the tech bros, all the Hollywood crowd, the Jewish Americans who live out in California who have been supporting Obama, they all participated in this. They paid for, they promoted, they espoused the policies. They said, we need more Democrats in charge, and they got single party rule. The downside to single party rule is you lose the ability to seriously compete because you don't really have to. We see that in the election in LA for mayor. They needed to corrupt that because they couldn't compete against somebody. You saw it certainly in the debate, the one debate, when Spencer Pratt, who everybody criticized and said he was just a guy from television. What does he know? I don't know. What he knew was he blew the two of them out of the water in terms of the debate. And all he had to do was tell the truth. That was it. So when you have single party rule, you lose all of the muscle memory of competition. You also lose the muscle memory of staying legit, meaning corruption becomes something that you can get away with so easily that you don't try to cover your tracks. You don't think you need to. It's been going on for so many years. So just imagine in any institution, but in government, how much paper exists. We're seeing it in Washington now that Trump got in, and we're seeing the memos and the texts and the emails. There's a reason why Hillary Clinton had all of her people destroy their phones and why she destroyed the server. There's a reason for that. Okay, there's a reason why the FBI destroyed all their phones, why the January 6th committee destroyed all their phones and destroyed all the documents. Anyone who's doing all that obviously doesn't want people to find it. Okay, so he's out saying, I did nothing wrong, bring it on. Okay, he's going to get that. He's out saying they're going after his wife. Let's get into that. one of the things that's been going on, nonprofits. Stop me if you've heard this. The nonprofits have been used to steal our tax dollars and to create avenues for corruption. All of the money gets funneled to a couple of different places. Through back to politicians in terms of salaries, consulting, or donations, through to illegals to do the same thing, to build a power base, okay? Or through to other nonprofits or other avenues to destroy America. So our tax dollars, we're working to destroy our own country. They're stealing it from us. JD and the fraud squad is now getting to the bottom of some of this. I'm going to pull up here in a second, if I can find it, the great Vince Colonnese. If you don't watch his show, you should. He's awesome. He's 8 a.m. live on Rumble. Somebody recently said, like, why do you talk about these other shows? We're fighting a big fight here. We're trying to keep America. And he has a great show, and I've been listening to his show since he came on, since I found him about a year ago, because he came on when Dan Bongino went into the FBI as the number 2. Okay, so I get a lot from him, so I want to share it. There's 330 million people in America. I want to build a great audience for sure, but I want to get the best information, and this is going to be one of the places. All right, so Newsollini says that Donald Trump started this thing. Well, let's take a look at this and see what we see. Miss Williamson is Newsollini's former chief of staff. Miss Williamson was indicted last year. Her attorney said that federal agents first approached her during the Biden administration. She was working for Mr. Newsom at the time, and the agents asked if she would cooperate in an investigation of the governor. She replied that she had no information to give them because she had never witnessed any criminal conduct by Mr. Newsollini. Okay, we're going to go to some other things here, but this is important. She was indicted last year and then pled recently, and I think it was to money laundering or a couple of charges. What was the topic? The topic was that she was working for Becerra. See all the corruption? She was working for Becerra, and she took some money out of a campaign account and paid somebody to get them to come and work for Becerra. I believe that's how it went. That person needed more money than the state could afford, so they took it out of a campaign account or paid them. Illegal. You can't do that. So she pled. I've shared before. Both of my grandfathers were bookmakers. One of them was a bookmaker. He was in the rackets. He used to tell us, if 2 people know something, it's not a secret. What's he saying? He's saying Miss Williamson knows stuff, so it's not a secret. So this Newsollini stuff that he's finding out now and coming forward saying, I'm going to get ahead of this, on the heels of this woman, Miss Williamson, pleading last month, so to avoid a trial, it's potentially likely that she's talking. If 2 people know it, it's not a secret. And this is the problem with single party rule. Everybody is so corrupted from top to bottom. They're all doing corruption because they're all doing corruption and they're all getting something. So part of the DNA of the Democrat Party is the guy at the top is corrupted, but he allows the guys below him to all be corrupted. And he doesn't have any moral authority to say don't be corrupted because they all know what he's doing. So none of them have any muscle memory or any sort of real headspace to say, be careful, cover your bases. Why? Because they've never had to. They have all the DAs, they have all of the regulators, they have all the elected class. And as I said to you yesterday, as long as you have the votes, you can do anything. All right, we're going to get to that now. So Vince has this woman, I forget her first name, Crabtree, on here.
And the
I'm going to see if I can figure out where she starts. Here it is. All right, we're gonna watch some of this, and I sped it up just a little bit, by the way, just so we could move things along. She wrote a book about the corruption in California. We're going to now transition to some of the Newsollini wife stuff. Jennifer Siebel, I think her name is.
She's here. She's a national correspondent for Real Clear Politics, and she's literally written the book on the subject. The book by Susan Crabtree is Fool's Gold: The Radicals, Con Artists, and Traitors Who Killed the California Dream. Susan, as always, great to have you with us. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be with you.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? It does seem like Gavin Newsom has a reason to be nervous.
Yes, my phone was blowing up yesterday with phone calls from the California Post, other editors I work for, my own editor. What is going on here? Well, there's a number of things it could be. The scenario you just laid out was mind-boggling because I looked into this earlier this week. The Washington Free Beacon, my former employer, wrote that story. It's unbelievable to me as a person who covered Jack Abramoff and all of the Indian casino gambling corruption.
I should have explained this. One of the things that she's talking about is that Newsollini would go to people who had business in front of the state. They're called behested payments. They always have a name for it. And he would say to them, hey, I'd really like you to donate to my wife's charity. And they, two groups that they mentioned in that article that I just read from, donated. Then those groups had business in front of the state. And wouldn't you believe it? The business went their way. That is corruption. It might be legal in California. We go back to what we talk about ballot harvesting. When you have the votes, when you have single party rule, it's two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. It's not fair for the sheep. Ordinary Americans are the sheep. Okay? It's not fair for us.
That took place in like the early 2000s. Didn't we learn from that? It's Exhibit A on what not to do if you don't want to get indicted by the FBI.
Yeah.
That corruption scandal took down multiple aides to Tom DeLay, who was the majority whip at the time, I believe. So it's unbelievable that he would behest this money. The behested payment system is legalized corruption.
See?
Just like in California, we have legalized rigging of our elections.
Yep.
It's legal. It's all baked in. This is the same thing. It's a shakedown. These behested payments. You shake down companies or entities, foundations. I found quite a few millions of dollars that Gavin Newsom directed from one nonprofit to a bunch of other nonprofits that provide services for
Nonprofits. We're going to go on to the nonprofits here in a couple of seconds because the nonprofit tax exempt status is handed out by the IRS. Why are all these corrupt places getting these nonprofit status exemptions? Because the IRS is corrupt. Because the IRS is a co-conspirator in all of this. They give out these nonprofit exemptions. Then with the nonprofit sort of allure, like, oh, nonprofit, it must be super good. They must be, helping children and the orphans. No, it's a mechanism for corruption. And then, as we've talked about it a lot in the past, nonprofits almost never have oversight from the IRS. Why? That is part of the quid pro quo. We're going to issue it out. We're not going to look. We're going to play the Sergeant Schultz, if you're old enough to remember, Stalag 13. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Or if you're a little younger and you saw the great movie, The Town, when the bank robbers are getting into their last vehicle before they get away, and there's a cop sitting in a car, and he's looking at them with their masks and their guns and the money, and he just turns away. That's what has been going on with the IRS. Let's get back to this.
Illegal immigrants. That's a whole nother topic. But this goes on all the time in California, and these companies and entities have business before the state. In that particular instance, Gavin Newsom sent a letter to the Biden administration to try to get that casino denied for the Khoi tribe. And he was unsuccessful. So there was a quid, but there wasn't a quo, as the saying goes. In that case,
not for a lack of trying, though.
Right. It looked like just, on its face, it's just unbelievable to me that he would request that much money for.
This is absolute corruption. And by the way, again, the Republicans are not necessarily the solution to the problems, but the Democrats are the cause of the problems. This goes on with Republicans too. When I talk to young people and I say, you are right, the system is corrupted against you, you're wrong. It's not Trump. He's not the one. It is not the conservatives. And the left is not the solution. You are putting fuel on the fire. This is what's going on. They are using government, the nonprofits, the whole web, steal our money, destroy our economy, inflate our purchasing power of our money away. It's the left.
For his wife, it's a nonprofit that she takes a salary of. But there's another interesting tidbit that looks really, really bad. You know that Dana Williamson, Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff,
Listen to this.
who pleaded guilty last month to corruption, basically. She took money, she siphoned money out of
This is the
Javier
Becerra stuff.
Becerra's dormant campaign account. He was the HHS secretary, and he's the front runner for the governor's race, running against Republican Steve Hilton. And she pleaded guilty because she siphoned $225,000 out. She orchestrated the scheme to the wife of a top Becerra aide to pad his salary so that he could go work for Becerra in Washington, D.C. So there's another element to this that the feds were asking her at the time, hey, we're looking into Gavin Newsom. Do you have any dirt on him? Do you
Yes.
know anything? And she denied it.
Yes.
But there's this episode involving Microsoft's Activision went.
I'm going to skip that. I was actually underplaying because I had it a little bit wrong. Becerra absolutely knew. I don't know if she's talking about Becerra too, but keep your eyes open for that. That could come. He knew, and he pays a wife of a guy who he wants to go work for him in Washington. Come on. It's so frustrating to see some of this stuff. She goes to this stuff with Microsoft, which is important, but not for what I want to get to here.
Into that, in order to put the documentaries into the curriculum of the schools, and then she gets paid a salary based on that. That seems to me during operation of the family.
All right. This is the wife thing. Okay. She gets paid. She has a nonprofit, fake nonprofit, corruption, and she gets paid by the nonprofit. She creates a curriculum. She sells the curriculum to schools in California. Oh, do you think the schools in California are going to buy it when it's coming from the governor's wife? Corruption. She gets paid for that. She's taken out $4 million. Let me see if there's a little bit more to that.
Because, for instance, she's got supposedly like this like documentary company where they generate these pornographic films that they put into schools, and they're about confusing kids about gender identity and all sorts of nonsense. And that, as I understand it, California taxpayer dollars are flowing into that in order to put the documentaries into the curriculum of the schools, and then she gets paid a salary based on that. That seems to me explicitly to be self-dealing, that the governor is enriching himself off of taxpayer dollars.
This is the incredible part.
All right. She goes through and gives a little bit more details, but I think you get the picture. So I'm gonna take Vince off here for a second, or for now. Newsollini didn't mention any of these things. Oh, my wife is a public servant. No, she's not. She's been getting wealthy. Where do we've heard that before? All the Somali fraud, all the hospice fraud, all the SNAP benefit fraud, all of the home health care fraud, everything. They're always stealing our money all the time. And they're funneling it through nonprofits. As I just said, how is the IRS not a co-conspirator? They hand out the tax exemptions to these nonprofits. Do they ever look into them? And then they don't evidently regulate them or have any oversight. Certainly no audits. Audits are exceedingly rare for nonprofits, exceedingly rare. I tried to look it up and it basically said almost never. Okay, this is corruption. So if you're a young person and you're saying, hey, the system doesn't work and I hate the system. Yeah, I sympathize with you. It sucks. It's broken. Single party rule in California and New York is a great example why or how. And if you live in those areas and you know how those areas have been destroyed and everybody is leaving, if they're leaving, it can't be working. So on top of the single party rule corruption, if your party had single party rule, which they do, and they were able to implement everything, what are they not implementing that they want to implement? What is the topic or the law that the Democrats are saying, if we just got this next one in, we'd get this state up and running? They have total control. We are seeing what single party rule looks like. They want to bring this to Washington. They had done it with Obama. All right, I want to skip over here and I just want to show, okay. We mentioned last week at some point all the corruption that was happening in the housing market with the illegals, okay? First, I'm going to play this report that talks about the new polling data that shows that the Trump's immigration policies are growing in popularity. Listen to this.
Support for President Trump's deportation agenda surges. That's according to a recent Harvard-Harris poll. It reads 80% of Americans now support deporting illegal criminal aliens, with records driven largely by Democrats, with 73% of party members backing that measure. 56% back deporting any illegal alien, regardless of other crimes committed, including a 4% increase among Democrats to 37% support. It comes as the Department of Homeland Security recently announced that over 3 million illegal aliens have left in the last 18 months.
Okay, what's happening? People are starting to see how the Democrats have been using the illegal aliens to funnel our tax dollars through. I gave an example last week. I'm showing more data this week. What I've shared quite a lot is the notion that the illegal immigrants are distorting our markets. They're distorting the markets at the emergency rooms. They're distorting the markets in the school, making them more crowded with people who can't speak English. They're distorting the insurance business, the housing market. Well, the housing, the Office of Urban Development, they have a report they put out. I forget what it's called, but we can see it here in a second. And I noticed there was a great post. Oh, I wish I could remember who posted it. I'll have to try to remember because they deserve credit for it. But in that report, this is on page like 45, okay? Let's just read it and see what we're talking about here. Right here. Immigration accounts for up to 100% of housing demand growth in some regions, and for 2/3 of rental demand nationwide. In California and New York, single party rule, immigrants have accounted for 100% of all rental growth and over 1/2 of all growth in owner-occupied housing in recent years. Okay? Now, when we remove all of the illegals from our housing markets, we are already seeing housing markets change. Austin was one I've mentioned quite a lot, and there are others. Why? Because the illegals are getting our tax dollars. We're lied to. Our tax dollars are taken from us. We're lied to and told, no, it's not going to illegals. It goes to illegals. Then they take that money and they go into the housing market. And now we have to compete against our own dollars, jacking up the prices for the housing that we need. And we have to use dollars that the elected class has printed away our purchasing power. So it hurts us both ways. Or as I like to say, we take it in the teeth, we take it in the back of the head, and we take it into each side. Okay? This is not okay. Trump is trying to get rid of the illegal aliens because, among other things, certainly national security issues, he realizes that it hurts the ordinary American. Listen, if you're buying a $25 million house somewhere, it doesn't hurt you. No, it doesn't. So if you're up in Atherton or wherever, and you're buying fancy, super expensive homes, and you've been voting and paying Democrats to get more power in a place like California, that's what I mean when I say you are breaking into jail, only you're breaking other people into jail who can't afford to buy their way out because they can't throw money at the housing problem. So instead of what you can do, they have to just suck it up and take it. Illegals. It's growing in popularity to get rid of the illegals. And it's going to happen more and more as we see more and more of this corruption. All right? Now, it's a very similar topic. It's not exactly illegal aliens, but it's still corruption. Okay? Stick with me here, guys. If you roll your eyes because I'm bringing up Obamacare and you're like, oh, yeah, come on. Please stick with me. This is going to be, I think this is important. This is a great X account. Andre, I don't know him, never met him. I read him a ton. He didn't ask me to do this. I don't even know, never heard from him. This is an awesome post. They told you Obamacare would discipline the insurance giants. Wait a minute, is it up? Yeah, okay. The insurance giants, force them to compete, drive down premiums through magic of an online marketplace with a clean government website. Do you remember, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan? One of the great political lies of all time. Obama knew that wasn't true. Of course he did. He also told us that our premiums would go down. I'm a guy whose premium before Obamacare was about $734, if I remember correctly, right and around there. And within a couple of years, it was 2x that. It was 13 something, almost 2x that. Then you watch the website crash. That was, if you were around then, that was unbelievable. And by the way, totally expected. And you watch United Health, Aetna, Anthem post record profits while your deductible climbed to $6,000. He's going to get into this now. This is the great explanation. Here is what the exchange actually built. The law forced you to buy a product under penalty of individual mandate. We're going to come back to that. You had to buy it. Then handed the insurers a fountain of taxpayer cash, our money, to make the product look affordable. Get it? We're forced to buy a product. Our tax dollars, which we already gave, they're getting funneled to those insurance companies to lower the price. Doesn't really lower, it lowers the price that we pay, even though our price went up, but it's a distortion of the market. It's taking our tax dollars. Why not just give us the tax dollars? Or why not just leave the tax dollars with us and not take it in the first place and make those companies compete for our business? They can't do that. Premium tax credits flowed straight to the carriers. That's our money, not to you. In 2017, the federal government paid roughly $42 billion in subsidies to the insurance companies, not to us. And that money landed in corporate accounts. The cost-sharing reduction payments, another mechanism, by the way, to get money to them, did the same thing. The Risk Corridor program promised to backstop insurers' losses outright, which is to say it socialized the downside while executives kept the upside. In other words, these companies, which he's going to get into here in a second, I won't take away his thunder, guaranteed customers, guaranteed revenue, a captive market created by statute. Any cartel in history would have killed for terms like this. Tony Soprano never dreamed of a market like this. Never. Okay? This is what the Democrats did. By the way, they passed this with not one Republican vote, and they rushed it through to do that. Free market economists have a plain name for this arrangement: rent seeking. When a firm earns its money by extracting subsidies through political channels instead of serving customers who choose freely, it stops being a business and becomes a tax farmer. The insurers lobbied for the mandate because they understood the arithmetic better than any of the voters. Yes, rent seeking. We talk about this all the time. Young people who are seduced by the left. This is Susan Kokinda's words, seduced by the left. It's a brilliant observation. They are telling you, oh, equality and everybody gets free healthcare. It is not free. If you're a young person right now who struggles figuring out how to pay for your healthcare, you're finding out what free is. Free is you suffering. That's what free is. The left always promises free stuff. And maybe in the moment, it feels like, oh, wait a second, I didn't pay as much as before. But somebody pays. When Venezuela was taken over by Chavez, oil was roaring. And so there was a short period of time where they had more revenue than they knew what to do with because they had so much oil. And then everything fell to poop. That's what we're seeing here. Now, rent seeking. What are they talking about? They're talking about how companies figure out it is more profitable for me to hire politicians and hire former politicians. They probably hire politicians too, but hire former politicians as lobbyists and send their executives down to Washington. They buy residences or lease them because they're there so much, and they lobby. They go in and they give campaign contributions, and lo and behold, with winks and nods, some of these politicians wind up on the boards of some of these companies later, or their wife or spouse does. The lobbyist used to work for the politician or used to be a politician. It's super corrupt. That's true. The problem is Trump is the solution. He's not the problem. He's the only advocate for ordinary Americans. When when Andre here says the voter doesn't have a voice, that's us. We don't have a lobbyist. Donald Trump is our lobbyist, which is why there's no tax on overtime, which is why there's no tax on overtime, which is why there's no tax up to a certain limit. It should be none on Social Security. It's why we're getting world peace, because he is the advocate for the ordinary American. I've played this before. I'm going to play it again because it's so instructive. This is Jonathan Gruber, one of the architects, bragging about how they got Obamacare passed. Okay, let's take a look.
You can't do it politically. You just literally cannot do it. Okay, transparent financing, unless I have transparent financing, also transparent spending. I mean, this bill was written in a tortured way to make sure CBO did not score the mandate as taxes. If CBO scored the mandate as taxes, the bill dies. Okay.
If the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, scores it as a tax, that's the mandate which forced us to have to buy this stuff, the bill dies. Roberts at the Supreme Court, he was the deciding vote on this, and he came out and said, oh, basically it's a tax. What this guy who drafted it and who helped as he's talking, we made it a tortured bill, long and painful. And if you remember, Pelosi said, if you want to know what's in it, we got to pass it first. He's saying, yeah, we needed that. We needed to trick you, me, ordinary Americans.
So it's written to do that. In terms of risk-rated subsidies, if you had a law which said healthy people are going to pay in, it made explicit that healthy people pay in and sick people get money, it would not have passed.
Because that's what it did. Healthy people had to pay in. That was the forced, we have to buy health insurance. And then sick people got to come in at any time. It's not that we don't want to cover sick people. We had a process to do that before. We had separate pools for them of risk.
Okay, just like the lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass. And, it's the second best argument. Look, I wish Mark was right. We can make it all transparent, but I'd rather have this law than not. So it's kind of like his reporter story. There's things I wish I could change, but I'd rather have this law than.
Okay, he'd rather have this law, Obamacare, than be honest with you. That's how it got passed. That's rent seeking. That's corruption. That's going all the time. Our taxpayer money taken, funneled to the insurance companies. When Luigi goes and kills that executive, that is awful and should never happen. Why do young people get seduced by that? Because their health insurance is going crazy and they see the corruption. They do. But the problem is you're supporting the Democrats who are doing this. You supported Obama. It's Obamacare. He knew all this. He wants it to be this way. By the way, when that money goes to those insurance companies, go and do the research and find out how many of those executive or even the middle managers in those companies were donating to Democrats versus Republicans around this time. You're going to find out that it was almost entirely Democrats. Why? Because when the company realizes, holy cannoli, we're going to get billions because government's going to play the heavy for us and force the people to have to be in here and then give us their tax dollars. Our stock price is going to go up. Everyone in the company either was told explicitly or realized it implicitly. Oh, my stock options go up. My pay goes up. I do better. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It means that they're like all of us, self-interested. But that's how government corrupts. They say, spend your money here and I'll reward you. That's how the system gets corrupted. That's what's going on here. That's what's been going on here. All right, we've gone too late, but I thought that this was important because it ties into all this corruption. The nonprofits are just another evolution in some of the corruption. The Obamacare bill, rent seeking. By the way, we see this right now. We see it in Washington in every bill. I'm drawing a blank on the crypto bill, the bill that's getting decided right now. They're talking openly about the banking industry trying to kill it and Coinbase and the crypto industry trying to keep it. Those two groups are donating huge amounts of money. If you go up any day on Beacon Hill, that's Boston, on Capitol Hill, you'll probably see loads of people from both sides going up there and lobbying. This is corruption. The founding fathers talked about it. The system is corrupted. Trump is the only advocate for the ordinary American that I've ever seen. Reagan was close, but not as good as Trump. Everything Trump does, it's been completely inverted. They say he's corrupt. They're corrupt. All right? One last thing, because I've been dying to put this up for a while. Okay? Wait a second. Where is it? There it is. Okay? This ties in also to voting and fraud and people voting for Democrats. Okay? This is the great Thomas Sowell. If you've been with the show at all before, you know Thomas Sowell gets quoted a lot. Why? Because he's a genius. He's 90 plus. We don't know how much longer he'll be with us, hopefully for a very long time, but let's read this together. The NAACP's decision to back the teachers' unions who donate money to them against charter schools that provide thousands of Black children their only hope of a better life means the NAACP should no longer be considered part of the civil rights movement, but just another part of the race hustling racket. This is the exact same thing that I'm talking about with all of this corruption. Okay? It's all accumulate money and power. I talk a lot about the schools and the unions, total corruption. All of the union dues that get sucked out of the teacher's paycheck go to Democrats. Why would Black people, Black Americans, be voting for Democrats when they have single-handedly destroyed your schools and crippled generations of Black Americans with piss poor educations? Now they're virtual illiteracy factories. And the Black population in America keeps on voting majority for Democrats. It's the same thing with the Jewish population. It's the same thing that we're talking about. Anybody who's believing in Newsollini, anybody who's been infected with TDS, you are voting against your self-interest. You're being tricked. That's what all of this corruption, how it all ties together. All right. Lots happening in the world. We're going to see what happens as we work towards Friday. I think JD is the one who's going to sign, JD Vance, the vice president, the agreement. And it's been signed electronically. So this sort of feels like one of those golf tournaments or tennis tournaments where they get the big fake check, like they get the real check later, or they just get it wired into their account. But the big fake check, they're going to be there and they're going to sign something. We're going to be covering it. Let me know if you think I made a good decision today on which topics to cover. The Ordinary American at proton.me, The Ord American on X. That's our show notes essentially. Comments, like, subscribe, follow, put comments in here. It helps with the algorithm. We're going to be back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. with loads more to cover.